My car has a sort of tappy noise. It sounds a bit like a sewing machine. Now you do get a clicking noise from the injectors, but there's something else, and I'm fairly convinced it's the hydraulic lifters. Now it doesn't seem to be having an impact on top end power for me. So just to explain, this is my 116 race car. I race in the 116 Trophy Series, and I'm replacing the lifters on that car. So it's a standard 116 engine. It's got a few mods around the engine. So ECU has had a certain amount of remapping. It's got a lightweight flywheel. It's got a sports exhaust, and there's a couple of induction system changes. But basically, it's a standard 116 1.6 litre engine. So the things I know I need so far, obviously I need lifters. So these ones I bought from Euro Car Parts. They're by, well, it's a UK company called Motive, I think they're based in Milton Keynes, although I have a sneaking suspicion they're actually manufactured in China. But I hope they're good quality. This is the point where I have to step in this video, and this is the revised version of my video covering removing the cams. I wanted to make you aware of this. The lifter you see on the left in this picture is an original, and the one on the right is one of these OEM units. You can see it's got a hole in the top. Now, I didn't take much notice of that hole. I just thought it was something to do with manufacturing. And anyway, what happened was when I installed the lifters, the new ones, and then ran the car, the cold oil pressure, so the oil pressure from startup, before I replaced the lifters on idle, it would show 75 psi. And after I replaced the lifters on idle from cold, it would show about 45 psi. So there's a massive drop in oil pressure. And also there was a drop just as it got hotter. Not so significant, but there definitely was a drop. And after a lot of agonising, I decided to strip the new lifters out and put the old ones back in. I got some help from a guy called Graham Tatum, who's part of the 116 Trophy Series sort of team and organisers, and he advised me on how to check the original lifters to make sure they were still okay. So I followed his procedure, and it turned out they all seemed to be okay. So I put them all back in the car. And actually, I've just come in from doing that, and I've fired up the car, and it's immediately back to 75 psi oil pressure. If you blow in the end of the lifter, one of these new ones with the hole in the end, you can blow right through, and there's no resistance. And in fact, if you blow from the other side, from the side, it will blow right through outwards. I don't know what the rationale is behind these changes, but basically, I would not install these lifters. And in fact, it's a bit of a lesson in that for this sort of component change, I think you're best off sticking with BMW original parts. But I just wanted to make you aware of that. The rest of this video remains valid, as do the following two videos that cover the reassembly. So don't be put off by the fact that these components were faulty. I don't really talk about these components again, only in a very generic way. I need a gasket set for the rocker cover because I'm going to have to take all of that off, so I've bought a new gasket set for that. And rather importantly, I need a timing kit to hold the cams and the Vanos units in place while I disconnect all of those, because obviously I'm going to have to lift the cams out and all of that stuff. Pretty scary stuff, but I have done it before on other engines, but not on this one, so this will be something a bit new for me. Let me talk about costs. This timing kit, unfortunately, about £200. You can get cheaper ones. I've been reliably informed that the laser one is very good, and anecdotally there are issues with the cheaper ones. I've got no proof of that, so you can take that as you like. The gasket set, I think, was about £30, and the 16, because we've got 4 valves per cylinder, the 16 lifters, hydraulic lifters, they came to about, I think they were about £75. Okay, so we'll crack on. You can see that so far I've removed the microfilter from below the windscreen wipers and the tray that goes underneath that. The 2 covers on the left and right hand side, one over the brake and clutch fluid and the other one on the other side over the ECU. So I've removed all that. I don't have a battery cable going from left to right from across the engine bay. That's because as a race car, the battery is inside the passenger compartment and it's been rewired to a certain extent, but so you would have that. But the next thing I do want to do is remove this vacuum hose. Now this turned out to be harder than I thought. I have removed one of these in the past on another car, another E87, and I was able to just squeeze, I think I was able to squeeze this and pull the thing out, but I can't do that on this one. So what I did was I jammed a screwdriver into it. Do you know, I did this earlier and it worked. There you go. Okay, so it does push in, because I was tempted to try pulling the little white ring upwards. That's not what you do. You definitely push it down. And what makes it worse, I can't find any reference that tells you that that's what you're supposed to do. So hopefully that will be helpful to you. Now, of course, I can lift this out of the way, and that gives me better access to the cam, you know, the area of the cams. Next job, take the cam cover off will be next. Now, I think I can do that without taking off anything else. Now, the other day I worked on my neighbour's N43, and I had to take the cam cover off of that because it had a leak around the cam cover, and that is a bit of a palaver because it's got a load of injector pipes going across the top of the cam cover to a high pressure pump that's driven off the cam on one side. This doesn't have that, so we should be able to just pull this off. Okay, and as you can see, I've got to take the coils out. I'm wondering where the wiring goes. I may have to look in the manual to see what else I have to do around the wiring, but hopefully I haven't got to take too much off of there. I certainly don't have a load of injector pipes to remove. So what I'm doing now is removing the earths for the coil packs, which are 8mm nuts. Oh, that's nasty. That's spun round. I have to repair that. That's broken the earth. Yeah. Okay. And that started to undo the bolt out of the. I'll show you. So that's the. In fact, the whole collar's come out. So that's the bolt, one of the bolts that holds the cylinder head cover on. Okay, that's not good. All right, we can repair that with some solder and whatnot. I've got to take this breather hose off. Okay, let's just check the book. Undo the bolts around the edge and then the two centre bolts. Okay. I don't want oil all over the place, so okay. Well, that's the first time I've seen inside this engine. The timing chain and tensioners were done, I think, about 5,000 miles before me buying the car, so I'm not too bothered about those. It all looks in good condition. You can see, I think the chains usually become stained with the oil, because when I looked at the oil pumps chain, that is stained. So this all does look quite new. I've got no complaints about the Vanos unit, so I'm not planning to replace those. The next thing I need to do is set the engine to top dead centre, so on cylinder number 1. So I'm just going to remove the number 1 spark plug. And to be certain I don't drop anything down there, I'm just going to put a small piece of rag in there to block that off. Okay, now what I really need is a dial gauge, which I've got on order, but it's taken weeks to come. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to roughly set it at top dead centre, and then see what I'm able to do with the timing tools. So to roughly set it, I'm going to put a small piece of dowel down the plug hole and then turn the engine over very slowly with a spanner. If you're going to do this, please make sure you keep this loose and it doesn't get jammed in the cylinder, because you don't want a bit of broken stick in the cylinder, because that would really mess things up. Need a 22mm socket for the crankshaft pulley, and you need to turn the engine clockwise from the front, so as though you're doing the bolt up. Now I'm just looking where I am. The car's in gear, just let me go and take it out of gear. By the way, if you're going to do this and you've got the fan out, put a piece of card or something in front of the radiator, otherwise you've got a chance of sticking your wrench through the radiator. Didn't have the, I think the stick was resting on one of the valves, so it's now on the piston, as you can see. Now that is the induction. It's just opened the inlet valve. So I'm on the induction stroke, aren't I? So that should be coming up to top dead centre now. Okay, that's top dead centre, I think, or thereabouts. We can go a bit further. Yeah, it's starting to go down again. So let's go back and then come back towards top dead centre again. Yep, I think that's there. Okay. Right, now I'm going to have to read up about the timing kit. Okay, I've discovered that my dial gauge should be here within the next couple of days. So bearing in mind all I'm trying to do at the moment is take the cams off, what I'm going to do is get them positioned in the correct place using the alignment tools and then move on and take the cams out. So I've had a couple of trial runs at this and it's not completely straightforward, but basically this inlet one, that has to be flush on the block, on the head, sorry. So we need to make sure that it's touching both sides and in is the correct position. And we need to do that by rotating the engine clockwise, which is the natural rotation of the engine. That's clockwise from the front, by the way. So I've got that in position. And what I'm now going to do is just rotate the engine until the tool actually lands on the block in the correct position. Okay, so you can see the tool is moving, and just there, that's just touched. I'm going to try and turn it a little bit more, just, yep, that's still, and that's in the correct position on that side. So let's get this spanner off the crank pulley. Oh, I can't do it at the moment. Let's not worry about that for the moment. Okay, so now put a locking bolt in place. Just to hold that in the correct position. Now what should happen if the timing is correct is we should be able to slip the exhaust one over, and it needs to be flush or no more than 1 millimeter above the deck of the head. Now I can tell you, I can't see round the back, but it's about 3 millimeters above, which is all a bit worrying because I don't know. I can try and turn it a little bit more, but there may be a bit of slack in the where I don't know whether I dare turn it too far because it's going to start to lift the, yeah, that's still in full contact with the other thing they say to do. Actually, let's do the other thing the other thing that's mentioned is to turn the square on the end of the camshaft to make sure it's fully round. So I've got a 22mm open-ended spanner. I can just move it a tiny little bit, see if that helps. Okay, that screw has gone, or the bolt has caught on the threads. It's not going in particularly easy, I have to say. I'm not mad about that, and it's way up on this side. So what conclusion can we reach from this? So it certainly looks as though the cam timing is out. Now the reason I'm going to have to go away and check this, and I'm quite worried, is because the engine is producing 128 brake horsepower versus 130 maximum. And if I go messing with the cam timing, I might, you know, endanger that 128 brake horsepower. The only thing I would say, actually, with this engine is the power when it's off the Vanos. There is a really big drop in power. I know you do get an increase in power as the Vanos takes action and varies the cam timing. But I suppose maybe to some extent that's compensating for poor cam timing. Right, I've locked the cams in place as best I can with the timing tools. The only one that's fitted correctly at the moment is the exhaust one, sorry, the inlet one this side. I'm going to loosen off the bolt first on this side, and then just to take the, you know, the tightness out of it, then I'll take the inlet one off. I'll refit the exhaust bracket correctly, and I might have to turn the engine slightly, and then I'll loosen off the exhaust bolt. Then I've got to take out the chain tensioner to take the tension out of this, and then I start to disassemble. Okay, so let's do that. So these bolts on the end here are 16mm. Oh, doing the inlet, aren't I? Wow, they're tight. Okay. Actually, before we go mad at these, let's check to make sure they're not left-hand threaded. Okay, no, they're not left-hand threaded. Doing the wrong one again. Now these are not reusable apparently, they're stretch bolts, so I'm going to have to get some more bolts. Yeah, hi. You alright? Yeah. How you doing?
What job are you on today?
Replacing the hydraulic lifters in my camshafts. Now that's done, we'll just turn the engine over a bit. I've undone the, removed the inlet thingy. We need to turn the engine over a little bit to get the exhaust side to line up. So let's do that now. Back that way a little bit. Just make sure I'm turning it the way the engine turns to get it into position. Yeah, that's it, that's flat there. Okay. Okay, so I'll break this one off. Okay, so now we need to get the tensioner out. I just want to break in here for a second. Note the missing nut there on that cam bearing cap. I discovered that. I've never had the cam cover off of this car, so I've got no idea how long that's been missing. I then went on to search around the engine and down the oil galleries to see if I could find the nut, and I couldn't find it. What I also found was that two of the other cam bearing cap nuts were loose. They were only just above finger tight,
which is all very worrying. So later on you'll see that I check to make sure that I can torque them down to the correct torque, because obviously one of the explanations is that somebody's gone at the nuts with too much torque and they've pulled the studs, but it turns out that's not the problem. So I've ordered another nut to replace it, replace the missing one, and yeah, we seem to be good.
Okay, next thing to do is to undo the the chain tensioner on this side of the block, and be prepared for an oil spill, it says. So we'll shove some of this down there. The picture of this shows it without the water hose in place. Let's see if we can get that. I don't know if we can. Yeah, we can just about see the water hose just here, but I don't really want to do that because I'm going to have to drain all the coolant. Yeah, let's see if we can get it off without. No, that's not going to work. We're going to have to take that hose off, and that means we're going to have to drain the coolant. You can see now that I've removed the pipe here and all the hose that goes down. It goes down onto the top of the water pump, I think, from the side of the head, and then we've got the tensioner just below it. I think it's a 27mm. Oh, this is going to be good, isn't it? That doesn't seem right. I think it must be 26mm, and I don't think I've got a 26mm spanner. Haha.
No, it is a 27mm head, and so I had to have a quick trip to, in the end I went to B&Q. That was the only place I could find that had a 27mm socket, and it's got to be quite low profile. You can't use a deep one, so just bear that in mind when you're preparing for this.
Okay, I got this undone, but it was really tight, so I had to use a short brake bar. As you can see, it's 27mm. Yeah, 27mm socket is needed. Okay. Okay, there it is. The crush washer has got to, or this sealing washer has got to be replaced. I'll have to get a new one of those. I was also told that there are different versions of the tensioner, and the later versions are better. I'm probably not going to do anything. I'm not going to change it at the moment. I've just knocked the edge off there where I tried to undo it with a spanner, you know, an ordinary spanner. But yeah, I think I'll reuse this, but I will replace the washer. Now, full disclosure here, my friend, he really knows these heads, he actually said to me, turn the engine so that none of the pistons are on top dead center. I think it's being doubly cautious about perhaps when you're disassembling it, turning a cam, pushing a valve into one of the pistons. Now, this is supposed to be a safe engine in that even with the one of the valves on full, you know, fully down, it shouldn't hit a piston. Of course, you know, that is a bit risky, banking on that fact. And having bent two valves in a Jag when I was rebuilding a Jag engine years ago, it's got a hemispherical head, and I bent two of the valves because they actually hit each other when I was tightening up the cams. I am a bit wary of it, but I needed to do it how I've done it, because otherwise I wouldn't. I tried, as full disclosure, I tried doing what he suggested, but the trouble was that as soon as I tried to undo these nuts, they're so tight, it just turned the engine over. So I needed the locking tools in place to avoid that. Now, I suppose somehow I could have held the end of the cam with a spanner, the other end of the cam with a spanner, and undo it, but quite honestly, they were so tight, I think that would have been a real challenge. So, as far as I can tell, and this is the way the Haynes manual tells you to do it, I'm just doing it exactly as per the manual. Okay.
Another point worth making is that if you have the standard flywheel, then you'll be able to use the flywheel locking tool, in which case you possibly won't have this issue. But in my case, I've got the Lighten flywheel. It doesn't have the hole for the locking tool, and so I have to use the method that I've shown you.
So next thing is to remove this assembly off the front, the cam assemblies, the sprocket assemblies, but I'm going to have to make sure that I don't drop the timing chain. Let's see. Let's get one of these off. I'm a bit worried that this just spins. I take it that's the, what's that? Is that one of the cam? Yeah, it's a cam sensor, isn't it? Because the sensor's plug is just down there. Okay. I don't know how you reference that, and yeah, that's a bit worrying actually. Surely you have to, it has to be in a specific position. Okay, we'll worry about that later.
I'll dispel this fear here and now. There's another tool that goes across the front of the those cam sprockets, and that locks the stators, the camshaft stators, in position. So once you've got the camshafts locked in position with the tools that fit to the rear of the camshafts, and you've got the tool at the front, then you can bolt it all up tight, and that gives the right reference point.
I mean, after all, they must be assembled in the factory from scratch, so yeah, that's not going to come out of there. So that's one of the bolts that's going to have to be replaced. I'll tell you why, because you do it up to it's one of these typical, you know, torque it and then do an angle stretch on it, so that'll need replacing. Okay, they actually suggest you do the exhaust one first, but I'm not sure that makes any difference, but we'll do what they say. Okay. Now, is it marked? Yes, it is. AUS, which I think is German for exit. You know, when you go to an airport and it says exit, I'm sure it says AUS to a German airport. I don't speak German at all, but, and what does it say? Aufgang, something like that anyway. And it says EX, so that's the exhaust one. As I'm the nervous sort, I'm going to do that so that we don't lose it. Lose the chain down the front of the timing chain cover. Okay, and that one says ein and in, so we won't get them muddled. No, it definitely says I should undo this at top bolt, but I don't know why. Oh, I can see why, because the caps won't, this end won't come off. That's why. Okay, so we've got to undo that. Okay, so that's an E8 external Torx. You're going to have to be really careful not to drop stuff down the front of this timing cover. In fact, why don't I stick something in there? There's a metal sleeve there. It doesn't seem to want to come out. It's coming with the timing chain cover. Okay, so we're going to safely store the that bolt. And you'll have to excuse me, I'm talking to my camera because I'm recording this. Okay, so we've got to take off this plate, this end, and that's the wrong thing. So there's like a steel guide plate, and what we need to do is use a T30, I think. Yep, T30. And lift all that out, so that's that piece. Whoops.
And it went down the drain.
Nearly did go down the drain, didn't it? That's that piece there. So we'll store that. Right, now we can start undoing the caps. Now it says to undo all 4 nuts on this end.
All
All 4 nuts, yeah. We'll just crack them open just a little bit. Because this is the cap this end for the camshaft. There's one cap that goes across the inlet and the exhaust.
Yeah.
And it says we have to remove that completely.
Remove it.
I'm glad we got a running commentary from you as well, Jacob. Okay.
If you're doing something else, you'll just mix it all up.
Yep. Okay,
That
so
would be good.
that's the cap that I've just removed. And of course the reason you've got to remove the bolt for the guide is because the bolt for the guide goes into there. So that explains that. So we'll move all these away. Okay, so the inlet caps are numbered 1 to 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4 at the back. And they're E for ein, which is inlet, and A for exhaust. So although you would think E is for exhaust, it's not. So it's A for exhaust, so it's A1, 2, 3, 4. Right, now though it doesn't say this in the manual, what I'm going to do is remove or loosen the caps, starting at the centre and working out before I take them off completely, to try and gradually relieve the pressure. I think that's a far better way, and in fact my mate who told me how to do this, he said don't just remove them one after the other until you get to the last one. He said because you could distort the last one or do some damage. So we're going to do what he says, and we're going to start from the middle and work outwards, but we're just going to loosen them off. So let's done that one. That was loose already, that's worrying. That was loose as well. Oh goodness me. That's loose. No, actually that one wasn't loose. And that one was okay.
A few of them were loose.
Yeah, so I had 1, 2 loose. That one was obviously too loose and has dropped out. Goodness knows where it's gone. It's not down the oil galleries because I just looked. So that's quite worrying about where that one's gone. But anyway, we'll carry on. So loosen off a bit more from the centre. That one's also, I can feel there's pressure on that one at the back. So that cam lobe is obviously pressing down on a valve spring. And this is the last one, which is number 7.
7.
But we should have 8, but one's missing. Right, now we'll take the caps off. And I wonder if we know which way around the caps go. Yeah, the caps can only go one way actually, that's okay. Because the caps, just to show the camera, the caps are offset, so they can only go on in one way, and they're all numbered on the top, as you can see. So we can lift that cam out now, like that.
It's big.
Yeah. So what you can see, actually they're not scored to, they look worse than they actually are. You can't really feel anything. You can feel a very, actually that one you can. Yeah, that one. That's that has got some scoring, and you can actually feel the surface is uneven. And you can also see the cam's had some wear where the surface is actually worn, but you know, if this is the original engine, albeit may have been reconditioned in some way, this cam may have done 160,000 miles. So okay, so that's the inlet.
And that.
Yeah.
Not a very good place to put your tools. It will go into the engine.
Okay, all right, I'll make sure it doesn't. So this camshaft, not so worn, interestingly. This is the exhaust one. Yeah, looks okay. Yeah, now what I just want to do is see if I can find the missing nut. Okay, no sign of it, so we'll leave it at that. Okay, so the one thing I'm worried about is, were these cam caps not torqued down correctly, and was the nut missing because they've pulled the threads on the studs? So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and torque them up. Now, according to the Haynes manual, you can reuse these nuts. They don't seem to be captive in any way. You know, they're not distorted, you know, like you get the sort of slightly oval finish on them. And they did wind straight off by, you know, with my fingers. Now the torque setting is dependent on the stud diameter. So let's measure that. Yeah, there's 6. Okay, they're M6s. And amazingly, they only need torquing up to 10 Newton meters, which, that's not a lot, is it? Okay, well that one takes okay, but that's hardly surprising because that wasn't one of the problem ones. Seems okay. All right, I think I'm going to stop. Cut this video at this point. So we've basically disassembled it, ready for replacing the lifters and then reassembly. But this video is going to be quite long as it is, so I think we'll call it a day there, and I'll record another video doing the assembly. What did I learn? Well, first thing is you definitely need the timing kit, because you need to lock the cams in place, otherwise you're going to have a devil of a job getting the bolts done on the end of the cam. I'm not sure you actually do need a TDI gauge at this stage. If you've got a standard flywheel and you can put the locking pin in, then you definitely don't need a TDI gauge anyway. But if you've got the lightweight flywheel, you will need a TDI gauge during the reassembly, but you don't need it for the disassembly. I needed a 27mm socket, which I didn't have, to get the cam tensioner off. You need a 22mm socket on the crankshaft pulley to turn the engine. You need to disconnect the electrics. I've actually got a cutout in my car, so I've just thrown the cutout. Getting the actual cam cover off was really simple, as we saw. It was just a matter of pulling the coil packs out and then removing the pushing all the electrics over to the right hand side of the engine bay. And then I disconnected this vacuum hose that went across, and I moved that out of the way. If you're in a standard road car, you're probably going to have an electric cable that goes from this side across in the same sort of plastic trunking, in which case you'll have to disconnect that from this terminal thing here and pull that out of the way to give yourself full access. I think the other thing is just be careful, plug up any gaps with clean rag, so that you don't drop anything down the front of the timing case or down one of the plug holes. The plugs are still in the other ones, so I haven't plugged those up, but number one here is doesn't have a spark plug in it. I think that's it. Was there anything else very special that I did? No, I think that's... Oh, yeah, of course, the other thing was I had to drain the coolant to take the top hose off to give me access to the chain tensioner, and I think you're going to have to do that. I don't think you can do it with that top hose in place. So that's the hose that goes from the water pump to the side of the head. Okay, if you're about to attempt this, good luck.